Alright everybody, just a quick video. I wanted to actually go over something that kind of caught my attention, and it has to do with one of the limited time fusions that we have available in the game right now, and that is going to be the Alika Fusion. Now, if you guys are considering doing this fusion, I would actually maybe reconsider, because out of these 4 rare champions, there's actually a champion here that seems to be quite a bit better than Alika herself. I know that seems very strange, but it's not unusual in Raid Shadow Legends for there to be champions that are below a certain rarity that are going to be better than champions of a higher rarity. There's plenty of examples of lots of epics being much better than certain legendaries, and of course there are examples of rares being better than epics, and even in some situations rares being better than certain legendaries, and I think this is going to be one of those cases. So there are a total of 4 rares that you need in order to fuse for Alika, and if you want to actually do the fusion in order to get those rares, there is a tournament going on right now that you're going to go through to get 2 of them. You need 750 points to get both of the rares for the fusion, which isn't too bad. If it was like 7,500 points, that would be a completely different story. But 750 points seems to be pretty reasonable, even if you are somebody who is free to play or you don't really put a lot of resources into the game. That should be fairly reasonable to accomplish. And then in the events, we have a champion training event. You can get 15,000 points total, but that's going to be for the Legendary Tome and the Void Shards. If you want to get the champions for the fusion, you need 5,100 points. I would personally not worry so much about the champion training event, and I would focus more on the tournament for this champion right here, the Void champion, and I'll actually go to the screen and show you guys. So we have Alika here. These are the 4 champions that you are going to need, and this is the Void that I'm talking about, which in my opinion is actually quite a bit better than Alika herself. Now let's take a look at Alika. I'm guessing they're running this fusion because they did the Sakara fusion earlier, which again was another fusion that seemed to be pretty mediocre, not really worth doing, not really worth putting the resources in. I skipped it, and I usually try to do the fusions if I can, but that was one that I was pretty happy to skip. It just didn't really seem to be the effort. So Alika is going to have attacks one enemy, has a 30% chance of placing an extra hit. This hit is always critical. Now, this skill, the problem with these skills that are always critical or have an extra chance of being critical is they kind of conflict with a lot of the ways that you traditionally build champions anyway. You're going to want your champions to crit as much as possible anyway. So that's another reason why, in my opinion, the critical chance aura is not going to be as useful, is because you're probably already going to have a lot of crit on well-built champions anyway. This is, of course, if you are in the late game and you have really good artifacts and good gear for your champions. Things that kind of add this hit is always critical, well, you're probably going to have a lot of critical chance anyway. And if you have a lot of critical chance, this part of abilities that say it's always going to be critical or it's going to have this much of a higher chance to be critical, you kind of lose effect from those abilities, is because you already have a lot of crit, so it's going to be a crit anyway. So you just lose some of the effect from those skills. Just a little bit of a side thought. High value target level 1 attacks one enemy, ignores 50% of the target's defense if their max HP is higher than this champion's max HP. So you actually want to have a lower HP for Alika because of this ability. Ignores 50% of the target's defense. I mean, that is going to increase the damage a reasonable amount, but it's not going to end up being anything too crazy. For an A2, for a second skill, non-auto attack seems to be a relatively mediocre skill, especially considering it's not buffing, it's not debuffing, or doing any of that kind of stuff. We've got the skill 3 here. Attacks all enemies, has a 35% chance of increasing the cooldowns of all enemy skills by 1 turn. It is an AoE. It does have that 35% chance of increasing the cooldown of all enemy skills, but overall, that's a relatively situational ability. Even if you do decide to use a billion skill books on Alika, it gets a little bit better, but it still has a long cooldown. It's still not adding any buffs, still not adding any debuffs. Pretty situational. And finally, revives the champion with 75% HP when killed, and you have to have Sakara on the same team for this 4th skill. So overall, just not really the best champion. Very situational, not adding debuffs, not adding buffs. You know, in my opinion, a pretty mediocre, even auto attack skill 1. Really not going to be worth the fusion. However, one of the other rares in this actual list here of the 4 required rares for the fusion is pretty good. And when I say pretty good, I was actually really shocked at how good this Void Champion is. And it is something that is going to be available for everybody to get if you end up getting the 750 points for the Champion Chase tournament. So definitely something that I'm going to be working on. I always personally get really excited for good rares because they are a lot easier to skill book than epics and legendaries. The game just throws rare skill books at you way more frequently than they throw epic or legendary books. So it's always nice to have good rares that come out because they're a lot easier to get maxed out skills. So it's going to be this Reliquary Tender. Alright, we've got the A1 auto attack. Attacks one enemy, has a 20% chance of placing a 25% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. You know, pretty mediocre, but it has a debuff attached to it, which is nice. Lots of opportunities to skill book there. If that was like on an epic, I would be very intimidated by how many skill books you need in order to max out this skill, but because it is a rare, it's not as overwhelming because rare books are a lot easier to come by. Now, it's this second skill which just blew my mind at how good this skill is on a rare champion. Wow, what a skill. So we have Tender's Watch. Removes all debuffs from all allies, then places a 15% continuous heal buff on them for 2 turns. Now, as you can see, it has a 5-turn cooldown, but there is opportunity to skill book it twice to lower the cooldown down to 3 turns, which means that you are going to have an AoE debuff removal from your entire team, and it also has a 15% added continuous heal buff on your entire team for 2 turns. Now keep in mind, again, you can end up booking this champion, which is a rare, down to have a 3-turn cooldown, and it doesn't need epic books, it doesn't need legendary books, you just need to use those rare skill books. So that is a fantastic skill for an A2, and it is a fantastic skill overall. If this was on an epic, it would be good. If this was on a legendary, it would still be like an okay skill. You know, this is honestly, in my opinion, this is like between an epic to legendary quality skill, and you have it on a rare Void Champion that everybody can end up getting right now for free through an event. So absolutely fantastic skill. And you have the third skill, revives an ally with 30% HP and fills their turn meter by 30%, which you can book down to a 5-turn cooldown. That's okay, you know, situational, not the best skill. So overall, you know, you've got the A1, which does have that added debuff. So not the worst A1. You've got a mediocre-ish skill 3, but this skill 2 is really insane. I mean, this skill alone takes this champion from being just another no-name, random rare that you need for a fusion to like actually a champion that I might even personally think about building myself, even though I have plenty of other epics and even legendaries that I could work on first, just because we get this unit for free. It's a rare, so it only needs rare skill books, and I don't know if I really have any other champions that have an AoE debuff removal. That's going to end up coming in really handy in certain situations like Ice Golem and in other encounters where you're constantly being thrown a whole bunch of debuffs. So this is a fantastic Void rare that everybody can get for free, and it is one of the materials for the fusion for Alica. So I would honestly think twice, guys, before you end up fusing, especially if you don't have another copy of this Reliquary Tender. If you only get the one, I would honestly save it. Now, the other 3 rares from this fusion are all pretty mediocre. It seems like I didn't notice anything really too crazy off the top of my head out of these other rares. They all just seem to be pretty medium. I think this guy would have been really nice if he has Leech and he has HP Burn. If he had a Poison, he would actually be pretty good. But unfortunately, he doesn't have a Poison. Decreased debuff, decreased accuracy is probably one of the... It's still a debuff, but it's... I would say decreased attack or defense is probably going to be more useful. Leech would be really nice if that was Poison instead of Leech. And then this guy, I don't think he was really... He had the Poison. If you combined this guy with the other guy, it would have been great. But unfortunately, this guy is not really super great either. It was really this Reliquary Tender with that super fantastic skill too. So I thought I would just share this information with you guys. You know, those of you guys who are working on this fusion, now you guys might know it's always worth taking a look at the actual ingredients and the requirements for a fusion before you actually fuse themselves, because you never know if one of the actual champions that you need for the fusion is going to actually turn out to be better than the fusion themselves. So this is, in my opinion, a slam dunk case where that is 100% true. So thought I would share this with you guys as a little side note. Hopefully now you guys might know, maybe you'll think twice about this fusion. If you guys enjoyed this video and it did help out, maybe, you know, this is not normally one of the kinds of videos that I do, but if you guys like this and you want more videos like this in the future, consider subscribing to the channel and dropping a quick like as well. Thank you again for all the support on the channel recently. Really appreciate everyone, and that's going to be it for today for this video. Have a fantastic day, everyone, and until next time, this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.